Good morning, students. So today we are going to discuss about the controlling process. So in the previous class we discussed about the limitations of controlling and the relation between planning and controlling. Today we will be discussing about the controlling process. So what are the process which comes under control? So the different kinds or different steps which comes under the controlling process, so it can be called as steps. Okay, so the steps which come under the controlling process are: one is setting performance standards, second one is measurement of actual performance, the third one is comparison of actual performance with standards, fourth one is analyzing deviations, and the fifth one is taking corrective action. So the first one, we'll go on to the first one, that is setting performance standard. So when coming to the controlling process, the first step is setting performance standard. So what happens here in performance standards or setting performance standard? Okay, so standards, it can be said that they are the criteria against which actual performance would be measured. So in your previous classes I told you that you have something called standard performance, and you have something called actual performance. So standard performance is the one against which the actual performance would be measured. Okay, so when you have standard performance, only then you can compare the actual performance with standard performance. If you don't have any standard performance in the organization, then there is nothing to compare with, or you don't have anything to compare your actual performance with. So it becomes difficult. Why? Because you have to have a target, or you have to fix the target every time, so that you get to know where you are when your actual performance is working. Yes, so only when you keep a particular target and when you measure your actual performance or your present performance with the standard performance, then you get to know the difference between your actual as well as the standard performance, or the distance between the actual and the standard performance. So that is very important. So measuring the actual performance with the standard performance is very important. So standards, they are nothing but the criteria against which the actual performance is measured with the standard. So standard, they serve as a benchmark towards which an organization strives to work. So they that is standard performance, or they are nothing but the target or the objective which an organization has already planned or fixed. Yes, it is nothing but the target which an organization has already fixed. So what you have to do is, like, you have to work in order to achieve that particular target or the standard which is fixed by the organization. Yeah, so those targets have to be achieved. So like I told you in the previous classes, like each and every organization will have certain standards which is set, or objectives which is set. So every organization works in order to achieve that particular target which is fixed by them. Every organization will have a target which is fixed. So each and every employee, yes, as a total, will have to work in order to achieve that standard. So in order to know the difference between the actual and the standard, or where you are and where you want to be, what you do is, like, you compare your actual performance with that of the standard performance, so that you get a clear idea regarding the actual as well as the standard performance. That is the difference between the actual and the standard performance. So when coming to your setting performance standards, it like set the standards which you have in the organization, or which is set by the organization, can be set in both the quantitative as well as qualitative terms. It can be set both in qualitative as well as in quantitative terms. So for example, standards are set in terms of cost to be incurred or revenue that has to be earned by the organization maybe, or product units to be produced, and not only the production but also the product units to be sold, the time to be spent in performing a particular task in the organization. So all represents quantitative standards. It all represents quantitative standards. So you get to know about the quantity of everything. So cost to be incurred, so it speaks about the quantity. Revenue to be earned, so what is the quantity of revenue to be earned, or the products to be produced and sold. So there also we are speaking about the quantity. So all this speaks about, all this represents the quantitative standard. So sometimes what happens is like the standards may also be in quantitative terms. Sometimes the chances that the standards will also be in quantitative terms. So what are the examples for this qualitative terms? So examples for qualitative terms are like improving the goodwill. So when the goodwill of the organization improves, it speaks about the quality of the organization. It speaks about the quality of the organization. Okay, so improving the quality of the organization, or that is the improving goodwill and motivation level of employee. Motivation level of employee are all examples for qualitative standards. So motivation level, so when the employee gets motivated, to what quality, or what is the thing which increases the quality of employee, increases the quality of work, increases the dedication or perseverance which an employee as totally increases. So it totally speaks about the quality. So when the employee gets motivated, the work becomes qualitative. Okay, so all these are very important. Okay, so here there they have given a table which speaks about the standards used in the functional areas to gauge the performance. So which is given in your textbook. You can just go through that particular table. Okay, so it's specified like standards used in functional areas to gauge the performance. You have quantity, quality, cost, individual job performance, all these things. So you can just refer that in order to have a clear cut idea regarding what it is. Okay, so here at the time of setting standards, a manager should try to set standards in precise quantitative term, as this would make their comparison with actual performance much easier. So like I told you, at the time of setting standards, a manager what he has to do is like he has to, or he should try to set standards in a precise quantitative term, as this would make their comparison with the actual performance much easier. So always when you set standards in the organization, the standard which is set by the organization has to be in quantitative, not qualitative. Quality alla, quantitative terms. It has to be in quantity terms. The reason why it is said that it has to be in quantity terms is like it becomes easy for a person or a manager to compare the actual performance with that of the standard performance. So you have to compare the actual performance of the organization with that of the standard performance of the organization. So when it is in quantitative term, it becomes easy for the organization to compare actual with that of the what a standard. Okay, so whenever qualitative standards are set, whenever qualitative standards are set, whenever qualitative standards are set, an effort must be made to define them in a manner that would make their measurement easy. So suppose if there is, or if there is a chance where the organization has used qualitative rather than what specifying the what things or standards in quantitative, or qualitative use ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ, then what happens is like when qualitative standards are set, an effort must be made to define them in a manner that would make their measurement easy. So for improving the customer satisfaction in fast food chain having self-service, standards can be set in terms of time taken by the customer to wait for a table, time taken by him to place the order, and time taken by him to collect the order. Quality. Yes, so like for example, like I told you, for improving the customer satisfaction in the fast food chain, having self service ಇರೋ ಫಾಸ್ಟ್ ಫುಡ್ ಚೈನ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ, ಸೊ in order to improve the what consumer satisfaction or customer satisfaction, you have to, or standard can be set in terms of time taken by customer to wait for a table, time taken by him to place the order, and time taken by him to collect the order. So this becomes very important. So what you have to do is like you have to concentrate. So always it is said that, or it is advisable that the standard which is fixed by the organization should be in quantitative manner. The standard which is fixed by the organization should be in quantitative manner. So if it is in quantitative manner, then it's like it becomes easy. It becomes easy to compare. So it doesn't mean that it should not be in qualitative manner. Qualitative manner irbaruntalla. If it is in quantitative manner, then it becomes easy to compare. So if it is in qualitative manner, it's like it finds or it has certain disadvantage. So the organization, according to its necessity or requirement, what it can do is like it can fix the standards according to its requirement. Like I told you, it may be quantitative or qualitative. So if it is quantitative, the comparison becomes easy. The work can be done in a effective manner. So it is very important that standards should be flexible enough to be modified whenever required. So the standards which is fixed by the organization has to be flexible enough so that the modification can be made by them. So certain modifications can be made by them if there is a proper standard fixed, or if the standard fixed are flexible. So due to changes taking place in the internal as well as the external business environment, the standards may need some modification to be realistic in the organization. So it can be changed according to the changing business environment. So that is why it is said that the changing or the changes takes place in internal and external business environment. So standards may need some modification. It may need some modification to be realistic in the changed business environment. It needs some changes in the realistic, that is in the realistic environment. Okay. So the next concept is, the second concept is a measurement of actual performance. So once the standard has been set, or performance standard has been set, what you have to do is like the next step is the measurement of actual performance. So what you have to do is like you have to perform or measure the performance. So performance should be measured in an objective and in a reliable manner. It has to be measured in an objective as well as in a reliable manner. So there are several techniques for measurement of performance. You can't go on your own. So there are several techniques. So obviously you have to measure the actual performance. So once the standard has been set, you have to measure the actual performance. So without measuring the actual performance, you can't compare the actual with that of the standard. So what you have to do is like you have to measure the actual performance. So there are several techniques for measurement of the performance. So they include personal observation, sample checking, performance report. So all these things. So when you check all these things, personal observation irbodu, sample checking irbodu, performance reports irbodu, so you get a clear idea regarding the actual performance of the organization. Okay. So it is said that as far as possible, the performance should be measured in same units in which standards are set, as this would make their comparison easy. So the performance should be measured in the same unit in which the standards are set. Okay, so standards will be set in certain areas in a particular manner, or there is a technique or of setting the standards, or there is a unit. Yes. Okay, so the unit which is used for the standard performance or setting standard performance has to be used even for measuring the what actual performance. So performance should be measured in the same units in which standards are set, as this would make their comparison easy. So comparison becomes easy if both actual as well as standard is measured in same unit. So if it is not measured in same unit, then there are chances that it is difficult. But when you measure the things in the same manner, units in the same units, then it becomes really easy for comparison. So it's like it is generally believed that a measurement should be done after the task is complete. So obviously it's like measurement has to be done. Yes, measurement has to be done, or it should be done after the task is completed. So only after the task is completed you have to, or you can measure it. Why? Because you get a clear idea or answer for your question. So if it is measured before the task, or or your work, then what happens? It becomes difficult to comparison or compare. Comparison becomes totally difficult. So that is why it is said that the measurement should be done after the task is completed. The measurement is done or should be done after the task is completed. So wherever possible, measurement or measurement of work should be done during the performance. Wherever possible, the measurement should be done during the performance. So for instance, in case of assembling task, each part produced should be checked before assembling. Each part should be checked before assembling. Okay, so similarly in the manufacturing plant, the levels of gas particles in the air could be continuously monitored for safety. So all this comes into picture when you speak about the measurement of actual performance. So measurement of performance of an employee may require preparation of performance report by his superior. Measurement of performance of an employee may require preparation of performance report by his superior. So measurement of the company's performance may involve calculation of certain ratio like gross profit maybe, or net profit, or return on investment, all these things at periodic intervals. So that becomes very important. So if you are going to measure the performance of employee, so it may require preparation of performance report by his superior. So on the basis of performance report which is provided by the superior, what you can do is like you can measure the performance of the worker or subordinate. Okay, so when you come to the measurement of company's performance, so the measurement of company's performance can be done with the help of your gross profit ratio or net profit ratio or return on investment at a periodical interval, so that you get a clear idea about it. So the progress of work in certain operating areas like marketing may be measured by considering the number of units sold, increase in the market share, etc. So efficiency of production may be measured by counting the number of pieces produced and the number of defective pieces in the batch. Okay, so all this can be done in the organization. Like I told you, the process of work in certain operating areas like marketing may be measured by considering the number of units sold. So how efficient it is. So if the organization or marketing organization is efficient, or the department is efficient, then a good amount of sales will be done by that particular department. Okay, so considering the number of units sold, so increase in the market share, all this. So the efficiency of the production, it may be measured by counting the number of pieces produced, and number of defective pieces in the batch. ಎಷ್ಟು defective pieces ಇದೆ, ಎಷ್ಟು produce ಆಗಿದೆ. So ಇದನ್ನ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬಹುದು, we can use it in order to know the efficiency of the production. So if the production is efficiency or efficient, yes, there is production efficiency in the organization, or if the production is efficient, then what happens, it becomes easy for them to pick the efficiency of the organization. So by looking into the number of defective pieces or the number of products produced, you get to know about the efficiency. Okay, so this is how you compare or you get to know about or measure the actual performance. So the third one is comparing actual performance with standards. Comparing actual performance with standards. So when coming to what comparing actual performance with the standards, so this steps involves comparison of actual with the standard. So such comparison will reveal the deviation between the actual and the desired result. So desired result is nothing but the standard which is fixed. It is nothing but the standard which is fixed. So what you do is like you compare the actual performance with the standard performance. So the reason why you compare the actual performance with the standard performance is to know about the what deviation available in the organization, or in order to check if there are any deviations in the organization. So if there are any deviations, okay, so if there are any deviations, those deviations has to be corrected. So if there are no deviations, then what you have to do is like you have to see that the organization is working efficiently, or you have to see that there are no deviations coming again in the organization. So when the standards are developed and actual performance is measured what accurately, any variations will be clearly revealed. So management, what it has to do is like it may have information relating to the work performance. It may have data or charts or graphs or written reports. Yes, so besides personal observation to keep itself informed about the performance in different segments of the organization. So for instance, you can say that performance of a worker in terms of unit produced in the week can be easily measured against the standard output for week. So this is how the comparison of actual performance with the standard performance is done. So the next one, that is the fourth step, is analyzing deviation. So you have already compared the actual performance with the standard. You have compared your present performance with the standard or the target which is set. So some deviations in performance can be expected in all activities. So it is therefore important to determine the acceptable range of deviation. So the deviation in the key areas of business need to be attended more urgently. Deviations in the key areas of business need to be attended more urgently. So urgent ಆಗಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಆ ಡಿವಿಯೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನು ಐಡೆಂಟಿಫೈ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. So you have to identify those deviations. So some deviations in performance can be expected in all areas. So it is therefore important to determine the acceptable range of deviation. So deviation, like I told you, in key areas of business need to be attended more urgently as compared to deviations in certain significant areas. So critical point control and management by exception should be used by manager in this regard. So what you have to do, ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ದಂಗೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ critical point method control ಅಂತ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಪ್ಲಸ್ ನಿಮಗೆ management by exception ಅಂತ ಇದೆ. Yes, so deviations, it occurs in the organization. It occurs in every activities, or most of the time every activities in the organization. ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟೀಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲವೊಮ್ಮೆ ಡಿವಿಯೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಬರೋ ಸಾಧ್ಯತೆಗಳಿರುತ್ತೆ. Yes, so what you have to do is like you have to take necessary corrective actions in order to reduce those deviations. So ಏನು ಡಿವಿಯೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ ಅದನ್ನು ರಿಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಕರೆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನು ತಗೋಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. So that is very important. So what you can do is like a manager can use both the critical point control as well as the management by exception, so that the manager can take up a proper decision. So what is this critical point control and management by exception? So when coming to critical point control, so it is neither economical nor easy to keep a check on each and every activity in an organization. So the manager in the organization cannot keep an eye on each and every activity or keep a check on each and every activity in an organization. So therefore it has to focus on the key result area, so which is called as KRAs, which are critical to the success of an organization. So manager or the organization, it is difficult for an organization to have a check on each and every activities in an organization. It has to keep track of each and every activities in the organization. Okay, so what it can do is like it can concentrate and see how it works. So what it can do is like, rather than concentrating on each and everything, so which is totally difficult, what it can do is like it can focus on key result area which are critical to the success of the organization, or which without which the organization cannot achieve success. So these critical areas are set as a critical point. They are set as critical points. So if anything goes wrong at the critical points, the entire organization, there are chances that it may suffer. So that is why it is said that rather than concentrating on each and everything which goes on the organization, which is very difficult, what we have to do is like the manager has to concentrate on critical result area, which is very important for the success of the organization. So these KRAs or critical result areas are set as critical points. So if anything goes wrong in critical points, the entire organization will suffer. So ಏನಾದರೂ ಕ್ರಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಸಿಚುವೇಶನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಥ ಸಿಚುವೇಶನ್ ಬರುವಾಗ ಅಥವಾ ಕ್ರಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ಸ್ ಬಂದರೆ, ಸೊ ಇಫ್ ದೆರ್ ಇಸ್ ಎನಿಥಿಂಗ್ ವಿಚ್ ಗೋಸ್ ರಾಂಗ್ ಎಟ್ ದ ಕ್ರಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ಸ್, ಎಸ್ ಏನಾದರೂ ಕ್ರಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ರಾಂಗ್ ಆದರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ದ ಎಂಟೈರ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ ವಿಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಸಫರ್, ವಿಚ್ ಈಸ್ ಅ ಮೇನ್ drawback, or it will lead to problems for the organization. There are chances that the organization will have to wind up sometime. So ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ, you have to have a total control. Yes, control ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ದಂಗೆ rather than controlling on concentrating on each and everything, what you can do is like you can concentrate on only key result areas which are totally critical points. So if anything goes wrong in the critical point, so the entire organization will suffer, which is totally a problem. So the next one is like management by exception. So I told you critical point control and management by exception, it has to be used by the manager to analyze deviation. So the next one is like management by exception. So when coming to management by exception, so this is often referred to as control by exception. So it is very important. So it is an important principle of management control. So based on the belief that an attempt to control everything results in controlling nothing. So ಎಲ್ಲವನ್ನ ಒಂದೇ ಸರಿ ಕಂಟ್ರೋಲ್ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗುವಾಗ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, it becomes totally failure. So an attempt to control everything results in controlling nothing. So only significant deviations which go beyond the permissible limit, should be brought to the notice of management only during the exceptional cases. Yes, not everything has to be brought to the notice of management. ಎಲ್ಲವನ್ನ management notice ತರಬೇಕು ಅಂತಿಲ್ಲ. So only those things which goes beyond the permissible limit should be brought to the notice of management. So if the plans lay down 2% increase in the labor cost at the acceptable range of deviation in manufacturing organization, only increase in labor cost beyond 2% should be brought to notice of the management. Okay, so the plan lays down 2% increase in the labor cost as an acceptable range of deviation. So 2% increase in labor cost tanaka ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, it is acceptable deviation ತಿಳುವಾಗ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, if there is anything which goes beyond 2% ಗಿಂತ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಹೋಗುವ ಸಿಚುವೇಶನ್ ಬಂದರೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ, that situation will have to be taken into consideration, or it has to be made known to the management. Yes, so only increase in labor cost beyond 2% should be brought to the notice of the management. So however, in case of major deviations from standard, the immediate or the matter has to receive immediate action of management on the priority basis. So ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ವಾಟ್ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಡೂ ಇಸ್ ಲೈಕ್ ರಾದರ್ ದೆನ್ ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಟಿಂಗ್ ಆನ್ ಎವ್ರಿಥಿಂಗ್, ವಾಟ್ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಡೂ ಇಸ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಯು ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಟ್ ಆನ್ ಕೀ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ ಏರಿಯಾ. ಸೊ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಕೀ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಆ ಏರಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ which are critical to the success of the organization. So organization ಯಾವ್ದು ಕ್ರಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅದನ್ನು ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಸೊ these KRS are set as critical point. So if anything goes wrong in the critical point, the entire organization will suffer. Yes, when it comes to critical point control. So when it comes to management by exception, it's like the deviations which goes beyond the permissible limit has to be brought into the notice of the management. So this is very important. So the last one is taking corrective action. So when coming to taking corrective action, it is the final step of controlling process. So no corrective action is required when the deviations are within the acceptable limit. When the deviations are within the acceptable limit. So there are deviations in the organization. So what happens if the deviation is within the acceptable limit, then there is no necessity of taking any corrective actions. Okay, so when the deviations go beyond the acceptable range, when it goes beyond the acceptable range, especially in the important areas that demands immediate managerial attention, so the deviations do not occur again and standards can be established. So when it goes beyond the limit, what has to be done is like corrective actions has to be done taken in order to reduce those mistakes which may happen. So the deviations in the organization should not be repetitive in nature, so it should not occur again. Okay, so that only when it does not occur again, the organization can work efficiently. So if it keeps occurring again and again, then it becomes a problem. Yes, it becomes a problem. So if it is not repetitive in nature, it is non-repetitive in nature, then it becomes easy. So what you do is like you check for deviation. So if it is beyond the limit, then what you do is like you take necessary actions for it. So what are the corrective actions which are taken? So corrective actions, it may include training of employees if the production target could not be met. So similarly, if an important project is running behind schedule, if the important project is running behind schedule, corrective actions might involve assigning of additional works and equipments to the project. Okay, so not only this but also the permission for overtime work. So this is very important. So corrective actions might involve training of employees. So if the production target could not be met, so if the production target is not met, obviously the employee will have to be trained. Okay, so the production or if the organization fails to reach the production target, then it is understood that it's only because of the target which is set by, or only because of the untrained workers or non-trained workers who are available in the organization. So if an important project is running behind schedule, corrective actions might involve assigning of additional workers and equipments to the project. So ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಲ್ಯಾಗ್ ಇನ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಅಥವಾ ಕೆಲವೊಮ್ಮೆ ಏನು ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಅದು ಶೆಡ್ಯೂಲ್ಗಿಂತ ಲೇಟ್ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಕೆಲವೊಮ್ಮೆ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯೀಸನ್ನ ಅಡಿಷ್ನಲ್ ಆಗಿ ಸೇರಿಸ್ಕೋಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಎಕ್ವಿಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸನ್ನ ಹಾಕ್ಕೋಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಆಲ್ ದಿಸ್ ವಿಲ್ ಕಮ್ ಇನ್ ಟು ಪಿಕ್ಚರ್. So sometimes there are chances that the deviations cannot be corrected. Okay, so in case the deviations cannot be corrected through managerial action, in case the deviations cannot be corrected through managerial action, the standards what they have to do is like the standards have to be revised. So the standards will have to be adjusted according to the necessity. Okay, so like I told you, if it cannot be revised or it cannot be adjusted, so in case if the deviations cannot be corrected, so what you have to do is like you have to see that the standards are adjusted accordingly. So it has to be revised. So that is why it is said that the standards has to be flexible in nature, because it becomes easy to adopt. So adoption becomes very easy. So this is all about the controlling process.